I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Ms. Fattacante.
Here.
Mr. Leahy.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
Ms. Martin.
Here.
Mayor Caulfield.
Here.
Mr. Conway.
Here.
Ms. Doherty.
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. Special order of business, Madam Clerk, Madam Superintendent, anybody has special order of business? None? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the last school committee meeting by Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Fattacante. All in favor, accepting the minutes and placing them on file, signify by saying aye. The minutes have been accepted and placed on file. Permission to enter. Madam Superintendent, just put on your microphone. There you go.
The Brandon Residential Treatment Center for $39,511 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP. Funding provided for this, by the Special Education Department. The Learning Center for the Deaf for $114,993 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP. Funding provided by the Special Education Department, the Special Education tuition account. Youth Operations Upheld, Inc., to the amount of $82,262 to provide for out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP, funded by special education tuition account. University of Massachusetts at Lowell, Saugus Industrial History Center for $35,425 to provide courses to enrich student content understanding and skill development on the American Industrial Revolution in the 3rd, 4th, 8th, and 9th grades. Funding provided by the school department local budget, field trip admissions fees. Lowell Transitional Living Center, Inc., $9,000 to provide recruitment, counseling, and the coordination for 15 homeless students to attend adult basic education GED preparation classes. Funding provided by the Adult Basic Education Grant, ABE. The Cambodian Mutual Assistance Association of Greater Lowell, $14,500 to provide the Lowell Adult Education Center with an on-site program for 40 foreign-speaking adults, funding provided by the Adult Basic Education Grant, ABE.
Any discussion before I entertain a motion to approve? Any discussion on what the superintendent has just brought forward?
Move approval, Your Honor.
Move approval by Ms. Fattacante, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Roll call.
Ms. Fattacante.
Yes.
Mr. Leahy.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Ms. Martin.
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield.
Yes.
Mr. Conway.
Yes.
Ms. Doherty.
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Moving on with the agenda, memorials by Regina M. Fattacante. Eileen Malloy Earl, mother of Michael Earl, United Teachers of Lowell Staff Representative. Marie Evelyn Gujeka, retired City of Lowell Crossing Guard, and mother-in-law of Patricia Gujeka, Title I Director. And Charles Borgio, son of Lucy Borgio, cafeteria employee at the Lincoln School. Let us all rise in darkened chambers for a moment of silence for these 3 outstanding citizens.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. May they rest in peace.
Just halfway, you gotta turn. Okay, that's it. They're tricky.
Unfinished business? Any unfinished business? If not, we'll move on to public participation. George Peterson to speak on motion number 5, and we could take that motion out of sequence.
Take the number 5 out of sequence, Your Honor.
Thank you. Motion to take that motion out of sequence by Ms. Fattacani, seconded by Mr. Leary, and I'll read the motion. Motion by Jackie Doherty. Request the superintendent provide a report to the Special Education Subcommittee detailing current programs or plans to include K through 12 special education students in after-school activities. The report should also include information on any substantially separate after-school programs, either existing or planned. Ms. Doherty, would you like to speak on your motion? Then I'll have Mr. Peterson come forward. Or
I think we need a second.
I'll second.
seconded by Ms. Fattacani.
Thank you, Ron. I just want to say briefly, I think the motion speaks for itself. We have limited after-school programs. As my colleagues know, the funding has not stayed consistent with the need through the years, but it came to my attention that of the limited programs we have, those students with special needs are often not included in the programs. There isn't an outreach to get those kids involved, and I just thought it's something we need to look into to see what we have existing and how we might be able to best serve that community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Mr. Peterson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the school committee, and members of the school administration. I've been involved with the Special Ed Parent Advisory Council for close to 13 or 14 years in the city of Lowell. I have 2 children who have been in the Lowell school system. One is currently in the Life Skills program in his last year at Lowell High. When my son Nathan came to the Lowell school system as a special ed student, he initially attended the Lincoln Elementary School. At that school, he was offered opportunities to participate in plays, Special Olympics, and other activities. He moved on to the Bartlett School, where he was informed that we were at the end of the hand-holding, that he needed to adjust. After 2 years of participation on their school site council, we were able to open up a program of interest that discussed, I believe it was Camelot or something on that nature, and he was allowed to participate by drawing a shield, and they discussed other aspects, and he was able to participate, and he was well received by the student population he was with. He moved on to the high school, and as time went along, he became less and less involved, and I became more and more frustrated as a standard bearer to provide an equal opportunity to the special ed community. This is not just the community that has significant, but those that have some limitations to their ability to participate. My son enjoys drama. He has never been asked, nor has there ever been any attempt at the high school to involve him in the drama club. Would he be able to carry a speaking part? No, he would not. Would he be able to provide assistance with costumes, set designs, be a walk-on during something? He'd be overjoyed to be a member of that. This recent year, I tried to get him involved in the Special Olympics. I was sent to RARA. My son suffers from mental retardation, and he was allowed to join over at RARA and be in the Special Olympics. I made numerous requests that assistance be given to him because he wanted to be in the track and field area. He also requested that somebody run the first quarter of mile in the Chelmsford Road Race on the 4th of July, simply because this is something they wanted to do. We had absolutely no response. I have tried to bring this to the public eye because I believe that this is a group that is not purposely overlooked, but they fail to have the squeaky wheel effect that is required, because many times parents are simply overloaded by the needs of their children. There are other instances that I could bring, but I would be bringing them as third-hand information, so I speak from first-hand information. So as an individual that has seen significant change at Lowell High School in attempting to provide after-school programming for these children, I respectfully ask that an approach be taken to include those children who have significant needs, those children that have limited needs, and an outreach program to take away the stigma from those people who would be engaged with these children simply because of misinformation or lack of understanding. If anyone has ever had a special need child and tried to find a competent babysitter, the most competent babysitter would say, no, gee, because gee, will I need a nurse for this? Will I need this? Will I need that? This is not always the case. The city of Lowell has made strides. There are unlimited resources that I have tried to bring to the table from within the community who are willing to step forward and say, yes, these are activities that we would be prepared to assist the school in. We have had opportunities in the past when we had a community schools program to have outside intervention into helping these students. We look to other areas within the school and we say, yes, we are in need of outside intervention to provide the best educational opportunities to the children in Lowell. I ask that those people who find that I have presented a situation within the Lowell school system that bears attention, not because of the lack of want, but the lack of the ability to put it at the top of the in-basket. I ask you to please look into this matter and reach a conclusion that would benefit all of the students in the city of Lowell. Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, I know the superintendent and her staff, and I know members of the school committee can feel your passion. And I would imagine that we would take avenues to address that.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak on that? Councilor Lay?
Thank you. I got promotion. No, I just want to thank, I have to get my glasses too, Mr. Peterson for coming down and speaking. This is something, that we should take a good look at. I only wish maybe it had come to our attention a little bit earlier. I'm sorry that you had to go through your high school years, but sure, this is a very important topic, and we'll take a good hard look at this and try to come up with some better solutions for our students. Thank you.
Madam Superintendent?
I too would like to thank you for coming in tonight and sharing your story and your son's story, and want you to know that we are committed to offering programming that includes all children, and we will definitely continue to work on this and make it a priority. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on with the agenda, under the motions, motion by David Conway and James Leary that the superintendent send a letter of congratulations to the Lowell High School nurses for their response with a staff member during a school emergency. Seconded by Ms. Martin. On the motion, Mr. Leary, Mr. Conway.
It's an honor to co-sponsor this with my colleague, Mr. Conway. We did have the nurses attend last meeting, and to note the skill of which they performed is exemplary, and I think this motion is a good motion. And also that they were putting on, what they discussed with us was, the need for using defibrillators, which we didn't want to put into this motion. It's something for a topic for a later date. But a defibrillator actually saved this human being's life. I'll defer to Mr. Conway.
Mr. Conway?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I thank you. 2 weeks ago when the nurses came here, it was very heartwarming to see them and to listen to them. On a personal note, I've worked with many of those nurses at the high school for a number of years. And matter of fact, occasionally go down there and have my blood pressure taken. And I've always found them to be extremely professional. And I did get an opportunity to talk to Officer Golden, and he explained in detail what happened. And he said to me it was absolutely an incredible situation, that each one of those nurses acted so professionally, and he said it was one of the most tense moments that he has ever experienced as a police officer, and they were right there. They knew exactly what to do. So once again, I think we certainly, at the least, we send them a congratulation letter, but also it shows us the staff members that we have that are so very dedicated and competent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I just want to let you know that the mayor's office sent out 4 citations to those nurses, and also a citation to Trinity Ambulance for their outstanding work saving the life of that cafeteria employee. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Motion passes. And can we go back to Ms. Doherty's motion? I neglected to ask approval of that motion. All in favor of Ms. Doherty's motion, seconded by Ms. Faticani, signify by saying aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Those both motions carry. I'm sorry. Second motion by Dave Conway to have the superintendent staff develop a promotion flyer for Lowell Public Schools. Excellent motion. Seconded by Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that if we take a good look at the Lowell School Department, I think that we'll find that the 3 levels, K through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12, obviously have numerous assets. We saw the 9 through 12 at the last meeting when they were highlighted in Boston Magazine, which, I'm certainly not surprised at that. But I think that what we need to do is we need to sit down and take a look at the positive things that are going on in the school system, and to come up with a brochure to let people know what's happening. When people come into our city, they can, whether it's going to a business or real estate or up here in the mayor's office, we can take a look at a brochure and take a look at what is happening, and so the services that we actually have in the Lowell school system. And I think that in order to do that, we also need to collaborate with parents, with staff members, UMass, Middlesex, nonprofits, and the business community, so that we can get a clear picture of exactly what each one of these groups contribute to the system. And I think that what I don't want to do is I don't want to tie the superintendent down. I know that she's doing a number of different things along with her staff. So I think I would like to, with this motion, to leave it up to her to give the flexibility that when she has that time, and her staff has that time, that they could perhaps come up with a brochure. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Third motion by Dave Conway and James Leary to have the superintendent designee send out a congratulations flyer to Lowell High School in recognition of the Boston Magazine rating of Lowell High School, seconded by Ms. Doherty. On the motion?
Speaking of flyers, this would be the, probably the inaugural, can't even say the word, flyer. Mr. Conway and I put this motion together because we really wanted to show the staff at the high school what an excellent job they're doing. So I think it speaks for itself, and I'll defer to Mr. Conway, who is a former housemaster at the Lowell High School. Thank you.
Mr. Conway?
Well, I would like to say that I, as a housemaster and somebody that worked at Lowell High School for a number of years, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at the results of the Boston Magazine and the good news that the high school did receive, because I certainly have seen on a daily basis for a number of years the professionalism that has taken place over there, the house school, with, of course, the leadership of the headmaster. But, you know, going through the corridors and working with people for the number of years, again, the dedication of the teachers and the paras and the guidance counselors and the entire staff. So I think that we certainly should congratulate them for that. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Before we move on to the next motion, I would just like to say that as a citizen of the city, I was extremely proud with the memorial for 9/11. It was extremely well done, and Chief Master Sergeant Jakes, the junior ROTC program, all the public safety officials, the faculty, the superintendent staff, I just could not say enough. As a matter of fact, I mentioned it at the council meeting. And that's what makes this city a little different than other cities. You take that extra measure, that extra step, and it wasn't just a dedication or memorial, it was done with much passion and emotion. And Madam Superintendent, could you send our thanks to Mr. Samaras and Chief Master Sergeant Jakes and the ROTC program, everyone that was involved with that dedication. It was moving, extremely moving. And the superintendent, we walked out together, she says, I'd never been so honored at anything in my life. So it was a great, great moment, and you know what? Those things happen every day at Lowell High School, every day. And that's why Lowell High School is in Boston Magazine. So I just Mr. Leary.
Thank you. Just to continue on what you're saying, you know, every year we say that it's so impressive to walk down the hallways and up the stairs with the hallways lined on both sides with all the students from the ROTC, and it's just impressive year after year that they do it, and it's a lot of class shown, and it was great. And then this year, the presentation of the flag to superintendent, that was, I didn't know they were doing that. I thought that was quite impressive. So they always do a great job there.
Very, very meaningful, very, very meaningful. Moving on with the agenda, motion by James Leary, request the superintendent to look into working with Middlesex Community College in order to convert the Bridge program into a special education program which would allow for the Lowell Public Schools to receive circuit breaker funding, seconded by Ms. Faticani. On the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this should actually have Dr. Chris Scott as well on it, because she's working with her staff and with the folks at Middlesex Community College. The operative word here is look into, as my colleagues are surely aware of, and the public will become more and more aware of, we're faced with many financial challenges. I think, right, with a budget that has $139 million in it, we need to, and next year with expenses depending to grow over $3 million estimated, with, you know, regular funding with the employees, et cetera, we need to look for ways of generating more revenue and improving our special ed programs where possible. So I look forward to the superintendent working with President Carol Cowan for some hopeful changes if they are applicable and available. That's no guarantee that they will be, and I'm sure once those recommendations come forward, they would go to the special ed subcommittee. Thank you.
Any discussion, debate on the motion? All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Moving on with the agenda, a motion by Jackie Doughty. Request the superintendent update the special education subcommittee regarding the status and process for obtaining nurses for field trips as needed seconded by Mr. Conway on the motion.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sorry, I didn't realize it wasn't on. This came to my attention last spring that we had children throughout the district who were not being allowed to go on field trips because they required a nurse to be present. And we did not have the cadre of nurses available to go on these field trips. I got a call from a very upset parent of a 6th grade girl who was diabetic. And because the child was diabetic, by law, she needed to have a nurse on her field trip or she wouldn't be able to go. So when I looked into it, I realized it was happening quite a bit. It wasn't just once in a blue moon kind of thing. And I know that Assistant Superintendent Ann Murphy has been working on this diligently over the summer. The reason I put it together as a formal motion was I wanted to make my colleagues aware of the situation, but also to ask the school department to provide us with a report in terms of what the plans are, that I think with proper planning in advance, our schools know who those students are in their schools. They should be planning in advance for those field trips so that central office is aware that we need to contract out for a nurse or whatever to make sure that children are not denied a right to go on their class field trip to the Science Museum. Because we haven't done our planning up front. So I'm really looking for some kind of a status report so that we can be sure that come this spring, we've got a plan in place so these children are able to go with their classmates on their field trips. Thank you.
Nice presentation. Any discussion or debate on the motion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Ms. Doherty, could you come up to the podium, please? I'm going to present a motion.
Seven 32, you took over the chair.
Okay, we have a motion by Mayor Edward Caulfield. Motion brought forward by Mayor Caulfield on behalf of Councilor Rita Mercier in regards to the increase in costs related to youth organizations utilizing the gyms in the schools. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Ms. Martin. Mayor Caulfield.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My colleague, Councilor Rita Mercier, former mayor, brought this motion forward at the last council meeting very passionately. And the motion was seconded by Councilor Jim Milanazzo, and many of the, well, matter of fact, unanimously, the council agreed. We have many youngsters in our city who belong to youth organizations, basketball leagues, and so forth. And the parents work extremely hard to get them to those games and probably pinch pennies to pay for the entrance fee. My grandson, Nicholas, participated in the Highland Winter Basketball League for 2 years, and it was the joy of his life. Well, from the report we received, and I understand it's going to go to the Finance Subcommittee and you're going to address it, a custodian, they've gone up to $34 an hour. Now, I understand if that's on a Saturday. There's also a fee of $50 to use the gymnasium. You know, we have many parks in our city, in soccer leagues, Little League baseball, Pop Warner football, and so forth. Those children aren't charged. These children are our children. They're students in our school system. So, on behalf of Councilor Rita Mercier, I would appreciate it if the Finance Subcommittee and this committee as a whole could look at ways and means of working with these youth organizations, because Ray LaFortune, who works tirelessly in the Little League systems and basketball systems, he said they're going to have to close it down because it'd be financially unacceptable. They just couldn't go to the parents and ask for more money. So that's the gist of the motion. I know the Finance Subcommittee and the committee will look at this and come up with something favorable for these youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fataconte.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I believe we all received the same email from this individual, and I believe many of us forwarded that email to Assistant Superintendent Lang. And my comeback from Assistant Superintendent Lang was that they are working on trying to alleviate some of the costs, take off some of the pressures, and I think that he'll probably be making a series of recommendations to the Finance Subcommittee about what we're going to do to be able to accommodate these youngsters. As the mayor says, they are our children, and we certainly do want to accommodate them in every way possible. So I believe that Mr. Lang does have some recommendations that he will be sharing with the Finance Subcommittee and then with this full committee.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those, Mr. Leahy?
Sure, thank you. I just want to make one comment that, over the past few years, we have tried to accommodate, and as these situations come up, we will work with, the concerned parties to make sure that all the kids can use the facilities. But, we just want to make sure that at times we're covering our costs too, electric and heat and all that. So, it's an ongoing situation where we're always making adjustments, and we're happy to sit down at any time and work these things out. So it's not like, we're going to just turn and exclude people from our buildings. We want to work with them. So Thursday night, we have a meeting with the facility, with the finance. I can't speak tonight, but finance and facilities will meet as a committee, and we'll have discussion. We'll try to come up with a solution for this. Thank you.
Any other comments?
No, I just want to pick up what John said. You said pay for the heating, pay for the heating. Is that what you said?
Night or whatever, I mean, in the winter, the heat's on for the basketball and lights,
But
so.
we don't shut the heat off in the schools. The heat's on anyways.
Well, if they turn it down or whatever, I just
Well,
want to.
it's just, I just like to
off,
see the
yeah.
committee work together to.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Because there's hundreds of youngsters who are enjoying themselves in our schools. And if we don't reach out and work with these youngsters, I don't want to see them going in another avenue. I'd rather see them on the basketball court enjoying themselves okay?
Mr. Leary?
And I agree with what the mayor's statements are, and I think Mr. Lang, who's, I guess, one of the founders of the Highland Little League Basketball League, or original founders of it, I think would want to work with them and work with every, organization, youth organization. The difficulty I think that we're faced with is that energy costs are rising significantly. So we're really trying to look at a game plan to have an energy plan. So there is going to be compromise, give or take. I think we're looking for recommendations from the administration. Anybody has any great ideas? We're already working on the light bulbs, making changes, which does have a significant savings. But the heat, if you have it on 68 and you can lower it to 58, we're opining that it does have a big saving. So these are things that are kind of new to us to some extent. We're going to work them out, and we're going to look forward, because the kids, like you said earlier, that's why we have these programs, that's why we have schools. So it's a work in progress. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, motion passes.
I'd just like to add that some of these youngsters are the future basketball stars for Lowell High School. Let me see, subcommittee, a joint discipline and safety report and minutes of the meeting of August 10th, 2008. Regina Fatacanti, Chairman, Safety. David Conway, Chairman, Discipline. On the reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members present were Committeewoman Jackie Doherty and Committeewoman Connie Martin, also Chairperson David Conway, School Committeeman John Leahy, and other committee members present, Jim Leary. We had several issues that we discussed regarding bullying, harassment in the schools, Your Honor. As you will see, that there was a motion by Ms. Doherty, seconded by Mr. Leahy, requesting that the language of the bullying and harassment policy of the Lowell High School handbook be modified with language that's more appropriate for elementary elementary and middle school students, and that the revised language be presented to the next Safety and Discipline Subcommittee meeting. We discussed the language, Your Honor, and the blueprint that we're using is the language at the high school. But as we went through it, we recognized that what might be appropriate for parents to read regarding their high school students might not be as appropriate for parents to read regarding their first grader. So Assistant Superintendent Murphy is going to look at modifying some of that language, putting together a handbook that will specifically address K-4, 5 to 8, but will address all of the issues that we recognize are present in our Lowell Public Schools regarding bullying and harassment. That was the first motion. And that will come before us, Your Honor, again, before the subcommittee and then before the full school committee. The second item we discussed was the Superintendent Scott informed subcommittee members of plans to designate a district-wide office referral form and procedure based on a request from the UTL, from the United Teachers of Lowell. And what that is, Your Honor, it would be a form that comes in triplicate. If a student had a discipline issue, the teacher would fill that out, keep a copy would go to the office, so that everybody is aware that an issue is concerning the student. If the office receives 5 regarding the same student, then maybe it's an opportunity to call attention to the fact that the student might have something more than a behavior problem going on. Basically, Your Honor, what I see it doing is it tracks our youngsters' problems and issues so that we can nip things in the bud, so that we can recognize that, hey, maybe little Johnny has a problem, and we need to sit down with mom and dad or caretakers or guardians and talk it over. Because, you know, when you send a child to the office, you don't maybe realize you've sent them 4 times in a month. If you have 4 pieces of paper and they're piling up on your desk, then you do recognize that, gee, maybe there is a problem. So we're going to have a study group of teachers and administrators to look at the current practice within the district. The referral form will include a checklist of certain infractions. The process will include a range of consequences that will be given to the student. What are the punishments that the student will receive based upon the type of infraction that the student has committed? There's going to be written notification of the infractions and consequences given to parents, so parents understand very clearly what the discipline code is. The alternative diploma program for Lowell High School. The superintendent came up with a great idea. The Superintendent Murphy and Adult Education Director Fred Abbasi presented an update on the Lowell Alternative Diploma Program that we're currently running. And the superintendent recommended a different way for us to actually refer students to the program. And it wouldn't be a situation where a student would actually drop out, Your Honor, but students who are encountering difficulty within the high school would actually be referred to this program. Currently, the student population is 11. We could go up to about 20. That would cap our population at the program. And very easily, we could accommodate 9 more youngsters from the high school into the program. So what we're looking at is funding through the Shannon Grant. There are currently 11 students, and they're looking at completing their graduation requirements within the next 2 years. There are approximately 20 additional students at the high school who are in jeopardy of not meeting graduation requirements who could be recommended to this program. We're going to establish a waiver process for eligibility. Right now, you have to be out, as I said, Your Honor, 6 months. But what would happen is a guidance counselor or floor master, house master would waiver the student into the program. A motion by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Conway, requested that a waiver process be developed to allow the current students at Lowell High School who are in jeopardy of not meeting graduation requirements be brought to the headmaster on an individual case-by-case basis for final review and referral to this program. The waiver process will be presented at the next Safety Discipline Subcommittee meeting for final approval, and then it will come before this subcommittee for final approval, Your Honor. Respectfully submitted.
An excellent report and
Thank you.
quite lengthy. And I think we should take a roll call on each motion.
Okay,
because
certainly, Your
there's
Honor.
amendments to the handbook. So why don't we take a
Yes.
a
Okay.
roll call on the first motion, seconded by Mr. Conway. Roll call on that first motion?
Roll
That
call,
way,
Your Honor.
we're amending a handbook that's already intact, so. Roll call?
Well, is it still Mr. Doherty and seconded by Mr.
Conway.
Leahy? I need a first and second.
But Doherty, Conway.
Doherty, Conway. Ms. Fattacante?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
On the second motion brought forward by Ms. Martin, and it was seconded by Mr. Conway, requesting that a waiver process be developed to allow current Lowell High School students in jeopardy. I think we should take a roll call on that as well. Motion to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Leahy. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Ms. Fattacante?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
6 yeas, approved.
An hour and 45 minutes. That's an excellent report. And one of the most important or drastic issues in any school system is somebody bullying another student. And some of those students go to school every morning petrified. And
Yes.
this is an excellent report and a way to address it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Accept the report of progress. and
Accept the reporter's report of progress and place it on file by Ms. Doherty, seconded by Mr. Conway. All in favor?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. The report has been accepted and placed on file. The second subcommittee report, curriculum subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of the meeting, September 15, 2008, by Connie Martin, Chairman, on the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Attending the Curriculum and Instruction Subcommittee meeting were myself and members of the subcommittee, Jackie Doherty and James Leary. We also had from the school committee present, Mr. Conway and Mr. Leahy, and from central office attending were Dr. Chris Scott and Jean Franco, our deputy superintendent. There were a number of other speakers who were there to talk on specific issues as we went through the evening. The first topic that we discussed was a proposed research project by a student from the University of Massachusetts Lowell's Graduate School of Education. The title of this proposed research project is Teacher Collaboration in Professional Development, the Experiences of Elementary Teachers Working to Improve Their Mathematics Instruction. I think what's particularly interesting about this proposal is that it really does piggyback on an already existing research protocol that's in place at the Bartlett. What they're going to be doing is really putting in place, the name of the initial project is Enhancing Mathematics Collaboration, and it's going to be working over the course of a year with a number of different teachers and using different collaborative methods so that teachers are able to work together in small groups, able to kind of break out in different configurations, and be able to really test over the course of a year which collaborative methods they find most effective and most engaging for the work that they're doing, and particularly in terms of their mathematics knowledge and instructional practices. What this specific aspect of the study is going to cover really is not so much, it won't be evaluating the teachers or their performance. What it will be doing is really collecting information on best practices as they relate to collaboration with in teaching environments. So I think that it's a great way to get some additional information out of an already existing research endeavor, and I think that it will certainly be very interesting for us to be able to get this kind of information as to what teachers themselves find to be most compelling about collaborative opportunities and how to make the most of them here in our district. It was, the subcommittee did vote to recommend this research project to the full committee, and if it's at the pleasure of the mayor, if you'd like to take all three in one, we could do that as well, whatever you think is best.
Fine. And I just want to point out, the meeting lasted 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Oh, there's a lot more to go.
And it's quite a report. I think we should take a roll call on this because I think it's very important. Planned Parenthood and so forth. So we take those three motions all together? That'd be okay? Any objection?
Move approval.
Motion to accept the three reports, three motions together by Ms. Fattacante, second by Ms. Doherty.
Could I ask, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, if we could perhaps discuss the next two and then take them all at once?
Sure.
Just so that everybody, so we have all the information at the beginning? Thank you very much. The second topic that was discussed was a presentation from Planned Parenthood. For those who watched or participated in our last school committee meeting, we did have a presentation from Planned Parenthood regarding the implementation of a comprehensive sexual education program in our middle schools here in Lowell. I think at the wish of this committee, we had asked for additional information, and the group, Planned Parenthood, was very thorough in what they brought for us. They brought us copies of the actual curriculum, which I thought was very interesting and certainly very professionally crafted. We had representatives from the group there to answer questions, and both from the committee members as well as from members of the public who had attended this meeting to get their questions asked as well. I think some of the key things about what's being proposed by Planned Parenthood for implementation here in the city of Lowell is that this is a comprehensive program. The curriculum itself targeted at grades 6 through 8, and it is connected to the Massachusetts frameworks. All of the items that are covered in the Mass frameworks are represented in this curriculum. Again, one of the key foundation points for this curriculum is the engagement of parents in terms of not only bringing them into schools for meetings, but also ensuring that we're sending home a great deal of information so that parents are well aware of what's going on in these classes beforehand and are also able to participate afterwards to be able to help their children, again, make sense of what they're learning and be able to impart to them their own particular family values that they want their children to have. I think that this represents a great starting off point for many of those conversations that need to take place within families. We did have some information provided to us by Healthy Futures, which is the organization which is currently in the school district. They are providing a federally funded abstinence-only program that has been in place for several years. And we also did ask them to provide members of this committee with some additional information about their programming so that the entire committee can make a well-versed decision when we do come back together to discuss this in, I believe it's going to be 2 weeks at the next regularly scheduled school committee meeting. I think one of the key things and one of the key questions that were asked at that meeting really was what had prompted this idea to change and to bring in a more comprehensive program. And I think our superintendent stated very clearly, and I think quite effectively and eloquently, being number 9 in the state for teenage pregnancies is truly a compelling reason. When we recognize the correlation between being number 9 in teen pregnancies while at the same time being number 9 in terms of dropouts, it's not difficult to see the relationship between those two numbers. And the idea of being able to offer our students more effective, accurate, and comprehensive information, I think, is something that, for myself, I think would go a long ways towards improving those numbers and improving the lives of many of our students. So at the conclusion of the presentation, we did accept it as a report of progress, and we did request a report from the superintendent to be delivered to the full committee in advance of our next full school committee meeting that gives written information about both programs for the committee to consider, and also to include some additional information regarding the implementation of Planned Parenthood, should that be the ultimate choice of the school committee. Again, it's a report of progress, so we don't need to vote on it independently, I don't think. And then the final research proposal that we did consider was presented by Deputy Superintendent Jean Franco, and it is entitled the Thinking Reader Research Proposal. It's part of a national study which the Daly and Stocklosa schools have expressed a very keen interest to be a part of. Basically, what this will do is give our students, our 6th grade students, access to a really interesting, I think, computer-based program that supports literacy, mainly among students who are struggling, and gives teachers an additional tool in their work with struggling readers to bring them up to grade level. In a lot of ways, it's taking a series of age-appropriate fiction pieces that students are able to read. Those who are reading at appropriate levels are able to do it in the traditional way. And for those students who could use some additional help and some scaffolding around their reading, this program does allow them to read it as part of a computer program, and the program itself will offer them supports in vocabulary understanding, in comprehension, all the different components that come together to make, I guess quite conveniently, a thinking reader. It is something that does have a bit of a history in that both the Daily and the Stocklosa were very, as I said, very enthusiastic about wanting to participate. It is nationwide. We had a listing of schools, particularly in New England, that are participating. And I think one of the big benefits of participating in this proposal is that these schools will be receiving not computers, but they will be receiving the necessary software, some of the audio equipment, and at the conclusion of the study, they will have in hand enough of this equipment for a full sixth grade class to be able to participate. So it will be interesting in terms of receiving data that is being compared on a nationwide level, and again, with these two schools being the recipients of, I think, some very valuable equipment and software. I would put forth to the full committee to approve all three of these endeavors, and would make that in the form of a motion, hoping for a second. And any of my colleagues, I know there were quite a few people at the meeting who would like to speak on any of these topics, it would certainly be welcome.
Motion was seconded by Ms. Doherty. Any discussion on this report? I must say, Ms. Martin, this is an excellent report, and it's worded probably verbatim that what the report indicated. And this is a very important program. It can't fail. It has to, you have to follow through fruition. And why don't we take a roll call on all the three motions, because I think the first motion might request a roll call vote on it. So any objection to taking the three motions at once as a roll call? That was brought forward by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Doherty. Roll call, please.
Ms. Fattacante?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
And we'll accept the entire report as a report of progress and place it on file with Mr. Conway, seconded by Ms. Fattacante. Okay?
Thank you.
Moving on with the agenda, reports of the superintendent. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Your Honor. The first one is a request of the school committee to grant a liquor license. The Distinguished Alumni Planning Committee requests permission to obtain a one-day liquor license for our Distinguished Alumni Awards program honoring Deborah Hopkinson, Janet Moore, Martin Meehan Jr., Lois Pedroso, and William Sullivan Jr., which is scheduled for Wednesday, October the 29th, 2008, from 6 to 9 p.m. in the Cyrus W. Irish Auditorium of the Lowell High School.
Your Honor, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Roll call by Ms. Fattacante, seconded by Mr. Conway. Roll call.
Ms. Fattacante?
Present.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
6 yeas, 1 present, approved.
Once again, before we move on with the agenda, like the 9/11 Memorial, this is an outstanding evening in our city. And it's the distinguished alumni who have been brought forward, they're unbelievable. So it's a wonderful evening for Lowell High School. Second motion, dedication, not second motion, the reports of the superintendent, I'm sorry.
Okay, dedication ceremony for the Agnes Meehan Library Media Center. At the July 16th, 2008 regular meeting of the Lowell School Committee, a motion was made and passed as follows: that the Library Media Center at the James Sullivan Middle School be dedicated and named in honor and memory of Agnes Meehan. I have been in communication with the Meehan family, and they have selected Saturday, November the 8th, 2008, at 10 a.m. as the date and time for the dedication ceremony. The dedication ceremony will take place at the Sullivan Middle School, 150 Draper Street, in the Library Media Center on the second floor of the school building. I will be working with the family and school staff on an appropriate program for this event.
Accept the communication, place it on file by Ms. Fattacante, seconded by Ms. Martin. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Communication has been accepted.
Mr. Meehan is here. I'm not sure if he
Yes.
wants to say something.
Ms. Fattacante, motion by Ms. Fattacante, seconded by Mr. Leary, Mr. Meehan, if you'd like to come forward to the podium, and feel free to offer your comments to the committee.
Mr. Mayor, members of the school committee, and members of the school administration, I would just like to thank the school committee under the wonderful leadership of Buds Caulfield for dedicating the Library Media Center at the Sullivan School in memory of my mother, Agnes Meehan. She taught in the Lowell public school systems and in the parochial school systems for over 47 years. She started in 1928, and she stopped in 1975 when she reached the age of 70. And as I said before, in the eulogy and everything, even at that time, she still had her fastball. And she would have loved to have taught a few more years. She loved teaching. She loved the children. She loved all the teachers that taught with her. And the last 15 years she spent at the Moody School under the principalships of D. Murray Cummings, and the last few years under James Sullivan. And they made a wonderful pair. They had a great professional relationship. And I can recall many times seeing Mr. Sullivan at the YMCA alumni meetings. The first thing he'd say is, "Joe, how's your mom doing?" So it was really they had a great relationship. And I know that she valued Mr. Sullivan not only as an educator, but as a friend. And I know she would be very happy and proud to have the Library Media Center at the Sullivan School named in her honor. I know she's looking up above. There's a little bit of cemetery there where she taught with Jim for a number of years. And I know she's all looking down at us tonight saying, "Gee, thanks a lot." And I know she and Jim are probably sitting up there and having a good laugh about it. So it was good. So on behalf of my mother and her extended family, thank you for this wonderful honor of honoring her and the naming of the Library Media Center at the Sullivan School. So thank you very much.
Mr. Meehan, I just want to make one comment. I'm only a spoke in the wheel, and there's many spokes that was
Right.
involved with this unanimous decision to do
Yeah,
this
it
for your
was,
loving mother, and it had to be done. Should be.
Yeah, she was quite a woman. She had so many stories to tell, and she always told the story that in all the years that she taught, there was only one time that she had to send a student to the office. And I can remember seeing many, many students out in the street. Joe, was that me? Was that me? And I said, no, she never told me who it was. But she really, she enjoyed the profession, and the English language was very important to her. And the library is a very nice setting for her to rest easy knowing her name is on there, and the English is going to be used to further the kids' education. So she always valued education as a very, very important thing, and she loved the school system. She really did. So thank you very much for
Thank
the
you.
honor.
Thank you, Mr. Meehan. Any comments or anything? Okay. Moving on with the agenda, under the superintendent reports, the quarterly report on motions.
Thank you, Your Honor. I believe at this time, the procedure is for us to go through the highlighted motions to discuss. The first one, dated 10/18/06, with regards to crosswalk maintenance.
Mr.
Thank you.
Leahy,
Leahy,
I mean.
If it makes it easier too, through you to Assistant Superintendent Lang, if this were just put on some sort of a, every July, we put in for the request just to make sure that they are being done. I know the city tries to keep up with them as much as they can, but,
Right.
this is, the crosswalks, that's something that we could just put under housekeeping, say, and keep
Right.
an eye on it, and then we could not put it in as motions anymore. But there's a couple in here, and so, I mean,
It
they are
appears again on
done.
page 3.
Pardon me?
It appears again on page 3.
Right, I saw that. So, yeah, they are done, and, the city goes out and does as many as they can before school, so, thank you.
Madam Superintendent?
Maybe it would be helpful just to have a discussion about all the motions here. I met with the cabinet to discuss the status of each one of these motions and to come up with a timeline of completion for each one of these motions. And so it would be helpful, I guess, for us to go through the highlighted motions tonight and get some feedback on the people who put those motions on, just to make sure that you feel, in fact, that it has been fulfilled, your motion. And if, in fact, you think it hasn't been, why we still have it in yellow. Would that be?
Sure.
So the next one, on page 2, although it's not highlighted, I'd like to bring it to the attention of the committee so that it can be replaced. 101707, the 5-year goals. I believe now that has been replaced with goal on page 4, number 34, which now is a 2-year goal recommendation. Is that correct? I don't want to replace it. I'm thinking it does, like. Yeah. Okay, good. Motion number 10, parent meetings.
What was that number again?
Number 10, motion number 10,
Number 10, okay.
dated 14/16/08, and there was a request the superintendent provide a report to the committee on the 2007-2008 parent-teacher meeting held at each school, including dates, times, formats of the meeting.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes, if I could speak to that motion. I made that motion, as the date says, last April. I never saw any report, and basically, I think we had a conversation that I'm looking for really a plan of how the school department is going to use these parent meetings going forward, since we didn't get anything on last year. I would like to see this still a priority. We are in a current school year. We have negotiated with our teachers union to have an additional parent meeting, as my colleagues recall. Prior to this last negotiation, we only had one evening a school year. Now we have teacher availability for one evening and one afternoon. And I just would like some planning and some discussion with how the school department is going to make best use of those meetings to involve parents in the education of their children, because it is so important. So I think that's still open.
Right. And I did follow up, Ms. Dory, with you on the contract language. So after that motion, I did go back to the teacher's contract to see what additional language was put into the contract. And unfortunately, it's only all that was negotiated into the contract is an additional half hour. And so it's not an evening, and it's not, and I sent you a photocopy of that contract language. It was back in July. Yeah.
I don't believe it was an additional half hour. I think it has to be a meeting in the afternoon within a half hour of school dismissal, so that teachers could stay after school and meet with parents.
Right.
So it would be more convenient for teachers than having to go home and come back, but.
I definitely agree with your position, and it's definitely a problem and an issue for us that we do not presently have it in our contract, that teachers have a significant amount of time. When I went and I did look into it, an additional half hour was added, and that was it. And so there wasn't any. I mean, I can resend you that language. I mean, it definitely needs to be in place, and we definitely need to negotiate that, because report card day and families sitting down with their classroom teacher to talk about their children's progress is a must. That's the first conversation, and one of the most important conversations we need to have with parents and guardians about their children's education. So we want parental involvement. That's a real good place to start. We have to have time built into the contract. So I did follow up, and I was very disappointed to see that there wasn't an additional evening or an additional half a day.
Maybe we could make up a subcommittee meeting with, I don't know which subcommittee would have Jimmy Hall come in and discuss this, because there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of questions I have tonight regarding that. I'm sure you do too, Ms. Doherty. But I think at some point, we have another subcommittee meeting, just have Jimmy Hall come in and we could all discuss it at greater length. Because I mean, what you explained to me is not what I
Half-hour.
voted for when we did these you weren't here, so it's not fair to you at this point, but we negotiated something specifically after school, so we could get after-school parents, and the union specifically agreed to it, and I don't want to get into a long dialogue on it, but I think maybe we should have Jimmy Hall come in, our attorney,
Right,
and have a separate conversation at a different date,
Right.
because this could go on for a good
right.
while.
Could I suggest
I
something?
began-
And I don't know if this makes any relative sense, but many parents could not attend a meeting right after school. They would probably
No.
attend a meeting
Yeah, I agree.
after dinner.
No, but we did is we knew some parents worked second shift, so we tried to do it, to give it a shot to see
you're
if it
gonna do it in
worked. and We
shifts?
negotiate, we didn't know if it would work. And I think Ms. Doherty's intent of her motion was to say, well, how'd it go? Was it of benefit to people?
Mr. Leahy?
Yeah, this is all news to me. I thought, and, you know, you weren't here, so, and I trust that you took a look at it, but when we discussed this, we were trying to have an option for the night meeting with the parents. We said we'd add a meeting after school to make it easier. And I thought that this was all done, so this is a big surprise to me and everybody here. So, I thought that was done, and the only problem we had last year is we just couldn't set the time up, so.
Madam Superintendent?
I did begin, I just assumed, Ms. Doherty, what you had said was as it was in the contract, so the conversation started with this request. You know, what happened, where are the dates or the time, and different issues came up with explaining what happened, but one of the big significant issues is that there isn't an evening in the contract, so, or, no,
Microphone.
the second, the one you're looking for doesn't appear to be there. There is an additional, my understanding is half an hour as I,
Ms. Martin?
Just if we could perhaps get an update from Mr. Lane, because I know that as we went through this, that the schools had come up with taking that half hour to turn it into an appropriate?
Yeah, without going back through the whole thing, in the last bargaining, we've always had the one teacher evening faculty meeting. That's always been there. We worked with the union to try to secure another time that would be additional time for parents, and what we agreed on was an afternoon alternative to them. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly when it's scheduled or how long it is, but I believe it's an hour to be held afternoon after the regular school day ends. And last year, for different reasons, different schools, it was implemented differently, or some maybe not at all. But for this year going forward, I know the schools are being more planful about that. And what some of the schools, I believe, are doing are actually kind of piggybacking that hour onto a monthly faculty meeting that they might have, so that actually it's more than an hour. It might be up to 2 hours that the parents would be able to come in and work with the staff. But I think we could actually probably work on a report for the next meeting. But that was there's always been an evening meeting, so this was an additional meeting in the afternoon. I just don't remember off the top of my head exactly how long it is at the different schools, but we can work on that.
Ms. Doherty?
Thank you, Rona. Aside from the time factors, as we work that out, though, I can't believe it would only be a half hour, because that's really not enough time. But aside from that, the intent of my motion was to look district-wide at how we are using the one evening we have and the additional one afternoon to make sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck with our teachers' time and the availability of meeting with parents. So that's really my intent. I mean, obviously, we have to work out the timing details of it, but I would like to see really a concerted, strategic plan. We've only got this one night with teachers, and we have one afternoon. How can we best get our parents connected to our teachers, talking about their students? That was my intention, and I feel that we still need that information. Sure. Thank you.
A half an hour would be used for introduction. Half an hour is not, certainly not long enough. And how you structure this, where you cut a class, whatever, to get the parents in there, and I'm looking at like an hour and a half. I mean, in order to make it productive, So, and that's just after school. Then you're going to have another meeting, Madam Superintendent, at night with those parents who can't. Right. So what is the issue here? With the union or the teachers?
if I could make a suggestion, again, go back to what I said initially, that maybe we need to have a separate meeting
Yes.
with our attorney, Jimmy Hall, look at the language, because when we negotiated this, I know everybody that voted for it this was another teacher meeting with students, and there wasn't a time slot specifically. I don't remember an hour, that's for sure. I was like stunned when I heard that, or a half hour. And the rationale behind her motion, if I, not to speak for Ms. Doherty, was to see, is this working? How's it going? And then we found out before the prior superintendent left that, well, we didn't do it. We're all like, okay, that's not good. So I think what we want to do is, since the language you just spoke to us is something different than I had voted for, we want to sit down with our council, go over it, and then working with you, Madam Superintendent, to put this in place for this year. If it's something that's not working or doesn't make sense when we go back into negotiations beginning in 2009, obviously, we work to change that. So I think your intent of the motion was saying we negotiated this, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And we really don't know because we didn't do it last year. So it is something that I think getting Jimmy Hall and Attorney Hall involved, sitting down with the full committee whenever we can get a chance and iron that out would be really good. Thank you.
I just think it's the utmost importance that these meetings happen, and especially with those schools that are underperforming, and make sure we invite the parents, and there be no excuses made. They can either make it after school or after dinner, and that has to happen. It definitely has to happen. Mr. Leahy?
Well, thank you. What I wanted to suggest, and what I was discussing with my colleague, is that I thought we already ironed this out, so I was going to ask my colleague why we needed to meet. I think it should just be done by the administration. We don't, I don't feel I need to be there to tell you how to do your job. We already voted to say, let's have 2 meetings after school,
Right.
so let's get it done. But, if we wish to meet, that's fine, but as far as I'm concerned, we already did this. It just should be done this year.
Madam Superintendent?
The only concern at this point, which is a significant one that I have, is that when I went to following up on an action plan, when I asked for the contract language to match the request, it just didn't allow me to do it. So I think it is something that we do need to reconvene on, as this, if you don't mind, with the attorney to look at the language, because obviously you have one perspective, which would be very helpful for our parents and our teachers and our children to have an opportunity to have this dialogue. And if in fact it's not there as you thought it was, it does definitely need to be negotiated next time around.
Any other discussion on this particular issue? Madam Superintendent, what you're telling the mayor and the committee, you're going to make it happen. We're going to have these meetings with...
We're either going to look at the contract language and see what we can do with, we're going to use the present contract language and do everything we can within that language, and then if it's not satisfactory, we're going to negotiate something better for our families and
Right.
our teachers next time.
But I just want to make sure we're not going to have a meeting that's going to last 45 minutes or half an hour. It's not going to work, because the parents will get frustrated and they'll never come back. Ms. Doherty?
Your Honor, if I could just add, I think that seems to be the issue at question. I know I certainly thought we negotiated for an afternoon meeting, but the superintendent is telling me that when she looked at the contract, the language only specified a half-hour meeting. And I remember you emailing me that, and again, when I read it, I thought it said you had to call the meeting within a certain time frame after school, because the teachers didn't want to be sitting around waiting. The idea was we would have the meeting right after school for parents who pick up their children after school, to add that as a convenient additional time from the evening meeting that we already had in the contract. So I think there may have been some kind of misunderstanding or miscommunication. If the contract does in fact only give us a half hour, we can't really work with that at all.
No.
And I think at that point, as the superintendent said, the only thing available to us is to go back and renegotiate. If that is the situation, I would be very disappointed, because it was
Well-
not my understanding of the agreement we had, and I believe from my colleagues, there was a general idea that we were getting an afternoon meeting, so there may have been some kind of miscommunication. At this point, we have to really look at the language, which is why I think my colleague has suggested we meet with our attorney and really iron out what is the exact language that we have.
Well, can I go one step further? What's wrong with the teachers and the principal in that particular school to cut a class and make an hour meeting for the parents. And just, you're eliminating a class for that afternoon. And make it work. You don't,
Mayor, if I could just not interrupt, but it's something, I guess what my colleague Ms. Doherty is saying is we negotiated a contract, it's been signed. If there's something that's ambiguous, we want to sit down with Attorney Jimmy Hall, who is our collective bargaining attorney, discuss the language, and if necessary, we can talk with the UTL as well. Interestingly enough, we're going to reopen negotiations in 2009. I think the intent, the sad part of this was last year, we never did this meeting. And when Ms. Doherty inquired as to whether or not they were successful, the answer was, well, we didn't do it. So I think if we get Attorney Hall, when we have an opportunity, sit down, go over the language, we can go from there and make some decisions at that point in time. Thank you.
but I don't want to see a long, protracted report and.
Nobody does. Yeah, I agree with you.
We're
Absolutely agree with
wasting time here.
you. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Right.
I agree with you.
So what's the wish of the committee? To let the superintendent, at the subcommittee, convene a meeting with Attorney Hall and come up with something that's suitable for the union and for the
Yes.
administration? And this is something that has to be done. You know, especially the math. A lot of parents need a little bit of help with the math that the children are bringing home because they don't understand it either. So, okay, Madam Superintendent.
Mayor, just to address your suggestion, you asked if you could, have children leave class early. Some school districts do place such a high value on parent-teacher interviews and the importance of that to academic success that they do dismiss at noon and have a half day where parents do come in, and actually 3 times, 4 times a year. So that may in fact be a solution sometime that you may want to look at.
Thank you.
Ms.
Your Honor, not to belabor this too, but I think we had a lot of parents ask us for this too. So this was something that we, brought this forward with a lot of input from our parents that said, 1 meeting a year isn't enough.
No,
So,
I agree. We should meet with the parents.
I can't say I'm
as-
disappointed.
right.
Yeah, I thought this was a done deal, so, thank you.
Well, we're going to come back with a report, and,
Right.
but it won't be protracted into a long endeavor, I hope, because this is extremely important, extremely. And we have to reach out to the parents, either at a meeting right after school or after dinner, and make that happen. Okay, I'm sorry, Madam Superintendent, you got something else?
Motion number 11. The Lowell High School Science Curriculum. Request the superintendent update the committee on the changes in the science curriculum for Lowell High School. Reported on August the 9th.
All set.
I guess, Madam Superintendent, if I could,
Yeah.
I guess what I would suggest, because there's a
Okay.
lot of these good old motions out here in Yella.
Thanks.
I have no problem with any of my motions. I don't know if there's other folks that want to bring up anything specific. The only one I had was the goals, and you artfully removed that, so that's great. I don't know if my colleagues would have, if there's something specific that someone has an issue with, they could bring it up now. We could save, 2 weeks' time going through the whole thing. I don't know, Mr. Conway, I don't know if any of my colleagues would have anything.
Sure. All right.
Mr.
I'm fine with all of them also. The only ones I had a question on was page 3, the wellness program. I don't know if that was ever reported out. I know some of my colleagues have had motions on this too, so if we could just get some sort of an update on what we're doing, maybe especially at the high school, but with all our schools. And that was about it for me.
Mr. Conway, then Ms. Fetterman.
Thank you.
Yes, number 18, one of my motions, that's already been taken care of, so that can be removed.
And you're on a number 17, which is the one right above it regarding Mrs. Meehan. That's already been taken care of
Yes.
also.
And the retrofitting of the school buses, the
Yes.
diesel buses, that's been taken care of too.
So that can be removed.
Number 16.
And just one more, Your Honor, that's not in yellow, number 33. Just, have we set up that meeting with Congresswoman Tsongas for sometime in October? If she was available?
She was just here the other day.
Well, I know she met with the superintendent. This was going to be a meeting that she could meet with all of us if anybody wanted to attend.
Madam Superintendent?
Well, I know we did, but we just voted on it, and not to rush, but we thought we could do it in October, so I just wanted to see how it was going along.
Right. I did receive correspondence from Congresswoman Nikki Saugus today, and to thank us for the time that we spent when she was here in September. And she did say in the letter that at any time she'd be pleased to meet with us to discuss further our educational issues that are unique to the city of Lowell. So I'm sure she'd be pleased to hear from us.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say, Congresswoman Nikki Saugus, believe me, she has hit the ground running, and she is bringing, I think the last press conference I attended, she brought in $7 million to the early childhood reading. CTI is going to benefit from that, and so she's really out there working hard. Ms. Faticani?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just, through you, Your Honor, to Assistant Superintendent Lang. Mr. Leary's motion on 6/18/08, number 20, the energy audit. There are lots of different companies, in fact, local companies within the city that do these energy audits. What are we planning on doing? Because now, especially now that we're looking at saving some money to keep our schools open at night, this has become all that much more important to us.
Would you want me to refer this motion to the city manager?
Well, I'm looking to see what Mr. Lang has to report out on so far, and then let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, verbally, I can just tell you, over the course of this year, the school department's actually working with the city, and the city manager's office has assembled a team to look at some performance contracting efforts that could take place with different utility companies. So there's a series of big ones like a Honeywell or a Johnson Controls, different groups like that, as well as some local ones that we actually do business with as well. We'll be issuing an RFP. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, we have issued an RFP. So we have some proposals back that we're looking at now from some companies who would actually come in and work with all city buildings, not just the schools, but to identify any types of areas where they feel we could conserve and save utility costs. What they would try to do then is use the savings to actually pay for capital upgrades in those facilities. So if they could find savings by changing out lighting fixtures to a more low-energy efficient lighting unit, they would do that. And they're going to be coming back to us with a plan. This is going to take the better part of the year. It'll happen this fall. You need to get into each of the buildings to really do your analysis and survey. And I anticipate, I think at this point, we were looking at the February-March timeframe when we would actually have some proposals in from the company that we ultimately select. And then that would be built into the city's capital plan, because we would look for these projects to be done up front, and then you'd have to recoup the cost over a 5 or 10 year period. So that's why we'd be working very closely with the city manager's office, because a lot of the capital funding comes under the city side of the budget. But that is what we're working on. I'm on that team, as well as Mike Cassidy and Brian Curley from the school side, so we're in the process of reviewing those proposals now. And I think we'll probably select a contractor over the next 2 months, and then we'll start the in-depth work in the buildings, identifying these issues. And again, we're looking at HVAC systems, windows, if we can find some energy-efficient windows, like a school like the Riley, roofs, rooftop units, lighting, all of those things. But it certainly is going to be, I couldn't give you a quick report on it. It's going to be a project that really takes all year. It could probably, as we hit different milestones and look at selecting a contractor and then ultimately awarding a contract, I could forward you that information.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Mr. Lang.
Ms. Dougherty, did you have a question at all? And I'll give.
Yes, I think we could remove number 31. The Planned Parenthood meeting did take place, so that one we could take off. That's a highlighted one. And I wanted to refer back to Mr. Leahy's science curriculum one on number 11. If you recall, at that meeting, we did get an update about the science curriculum, but it was brought to the subcommittee's attention that the science labs have not really been utilized. We have a very small number, and we're not sure that we're using them as effectively as we could. And I believe one of the decisions of that. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I keep forgetting to put my microphone on tonight. I'm sorry. In regards to the high school science program, the decision was made, we got an update on the curriculum, but the decision was made that the schools department would provide us with a report how to most effectively use the labs we do have. And so that's still out there. I just wanted to remind the superintendent of that. Thank you.
Madam Superintendent, go ahead.
Thank you for the reminder. We have met with Wendy Jack and Bill Samaras and other administrators at the high school with regards to the science lab, just as a follow-up, to discuss some of the issues that were brought forward with regards to the amount of money that the school committee has allotted for the science labs, so that we would have some understanding of exactly where that money went, what it was spent on, what the shortfalls were, because I do have an understanding from the school committee that there is some frustration that a good sum of money has been designated for that particular reason, and that at this time we still don't have running water in some of the labs, we still don't have electricity running. This is what I've learned since we've last talked, and that it is the physical plant is old in some of the labs, and that although there has been renovations done to the labs, they're not necessarily always in working order for a variety of reasons. So the follow-up to that meeting is the next meeting, where we will be, we have asked for a list of where an accounting, which was no problem for them to give us, on what has been purchased and what still is outstanding and what obstacles are presently existing for the labs to be used further. When I did ask the question at the second meeting with regards to the use of the labs, and did any teachers at this time feel that they, for some reason, weren't able to use the lab, issues surrounding it, just again, the costs of running a full lab program. And at one time, we spent significantly, a great deal more amount of money on the science program than we presently do, and this will have to be an issue that we look at when we fund the FY10 budget, if we want a more robust lab program. But this report is coming, and so you will see the details of that. That's just a high-level overview, just so that you know we have followed up and have had that conversation.
Mr. Conway?
Yes, to the superintendent, through you, Mr. Mayor. Number 24, could you tell me what the disposition of that motion might be? Number 24. I think we were talking about the possibility of bringing someone on board.
Yes. This particular item is on the agenda for tomorrow night's finance meeting, and at that time, you will be presented. There is a job description for a grant writer, if that's the wishes of the school committee, and I've also put in the packet for that meeting tomorrow night a grant writer who has connections with Fidelity Foundation, who's going to work with Edvestors, and who's going to work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, so at an hourly rate of $45 an hour, which is relatively very reasonable given the industry. So the resume and the letter is attached to the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting, to be discussed in full, to see what the committee's wishes are.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Martin?
I know that when we had initially had this conversation, we wanted to have some of the background information about previous people in this position. So will that be delivered to the Finance Committee tomorrow night?
Just point of clarification, Ms. Martin, previous people in this position?
When we had prior grant writers on staff for the Lowell Public Schools?
Presently, we have a position that they write like state grants. Yes. That position, that's the only position we have. But
I know that currently we only have that one position.
okay.
What I was looking for at the previous meeting was, historically, we have had people in a grant writing position, years ago.
Oh, okay.
But I'd like to know when it was eliminated, why it was eliminated, so that if we're treading into water we've already waded in, perhaps some history might help us.
Okay, that was an oversight on my part, I didn't realize.
No problem. If we could just get some of that information, that would be great.
No
Ms.
problem.
Ms. Fattacani.
Your Honor, I'll provide my colleague with a little bit of historical background on that one. If you remember at the time, this committee sought to terminate the services of former Superintendent Henry Mraz. We had an agreement with the former superintendent that he spend the end of his contract as our grant writer. That was the last time that this school department saw a grant writer.
There was one under Superintendent Sapasaris.
Yes, but yes.
I mean, that's just all I'm aware of. I mean, I just like, I mean, it was obviously a position that we had before.
Yes, and then we did away with, right.
And that we did away with. I'd like to know the reasoning behind doing away with it before we bring it back.
That's a good point. I know there is a school in the district that has a grant writer, and the grant writer is paid approximately $75,000 a year. And I asked the individual who's in charge of this, I said, is it profitable? He just brought in $800,000. And I'd like to know, if we had a grant writer that was productive and bringing in money into the school system, why was the position ever eliminated? That's, so.
Perhaps then we could figure that out.
Mr. Conway?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. I'm not sure why the motion was into the subcommittee, finance subcommittee. I'm not sure on number 24, why that went into a finance subcommittee. There was a motion on the floor.
If I could be of some
was
help on that, if I, Mr. Colleague, if I could, Mr. Mayor, if I could be of some help to that. I think when we made the motion and passed the motion, which I actually second, this finance subcommittee, through Mr. Leahy and myself and Ms. Doherty, were actually looking at the same thing. And we had made a recommendation to the superintendent, in I think it was a 3-0 vote, to have her bring back recommendations, which is exactly similar to what your motion was. So we felt that it was the same thing, so we continue forward. That's, in essence, two things going on at the same time, which are two very positive things. I think that's how that got arranged that way. I mean, if we're doing the same thing, and obviously, Mr. Conway, you're more than welcome to attend that meeting, and obviously, there's 7 of us, there's not 435 like Congress, so everything's got to be passed with all of our opinions and voices, and obviously, this is something you feel is important, and we, as in the Finance Committee, as in the whole school committee, acknowledge that. There's a lot of debate on that tomorrow, and you're encouraged to attend, obviously, and it would be more discussion as we go forward. But I think that is the rationale, because we were unaware that you actually had the motion, but when we saw the motion on Friday, because we had a meeting, I think, on the Thursday prior to your motion, we're like, oh, okay, that's being worked on, that's great, and we're going to go forward with it. It was actually the same type of philosophy, so I think that's kind of the creation in that type of thing. Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Conway? Okay. Any other discussion on these quarterly reports or motions? Accept the report brought forward by the superintendent. Motion to approve the report by Ms. Fattacani, seconded by Ms. Martin. All in favor, accepting the report, place it on file, signify by saying aye. The report has been accepted and will be placed on file. Personnel report.
I submit the personnel report dated September 17th, 2008.
Second.
Move to accept the report by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Fattacani. Roll call.
Ms. Fattacante?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty? Yes. 7 yeas, approved.
And
Madam Super-
the list of eligible teachers dated September the 17th, 2008.
Move approval, Your Honor.
Move approval by Ms. Fattacani, second by Mr. Leahy. All in favor accepting the report, is report of progress, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? That report has been accepted, placed on file. The last thing on the agenda is new business amendment to the Greater Lawrence Educational Collaborative Agreements.
You don't have it? I believe we need Mr. Lane to explain this to us.
Thank you. We're bringing forward tonight a vote that the school committee we're recommending take, which will amend the bylaws for GLEC, our educational collaborative. I put together a packet for you with some historical information on the Greater Lawrence Ed Collaborative, just what they are as an organization, how they're incorporated. Basically, what happened, there were 10 communities now that make up Greater Lawrence Ed Collaborative. Lowell is one of them. On the North Shore, there was a collaborative called Coastal Collaborative, which over this last year dissolved, and that had 8 or 10 communities in it as well. The Greater Lawrence Ed Board was approached because several of their programs were very good programs. So GLEC ended up taking over those programs for the coming year because those 10 districts won't be part of Coastal anymore. It's going to give the Greater Lawrence Ed communities, including Lowell, a real expansion opportunity because some of the programming that they offer is really very kind of niche programming towards a specific special ed population, and it's going to help us control our out-of-district costs and also provide programming much closer to home than sending a lot of our kids that much further away to other programs. So this is certainly going to strengthen our partnership with GLEC as well as the other communities. In doing so, the board members at Greater Lawrence, of which we're one, really wanted to make the former coastal communities still a part of the process. We really wanted them, they still had an identity in the programs. We want them to still be involved with the programs because the success of the programs overall now is very important to the Greater Lawrence Ed Collaborative. We want them to be well-run and to really attract a good number of students. So what we're recommending we do, and all the different communities involved in GLEC have taken this vote to allow the former Coastal Collaborative communities to be adjunct members on the Greater Lawrence board. So if you look at page 3 of the packet that I prepared for you, that would be the actual motion that the attorney for the Greater Lawrence Ed Collaborative has drafted. And there's corresponding pages 4 through 7 that have certain areas where there are bold words, and that's where the actual bylaws would be changed. But it would be our recommendation that the motion be made and presented to allow this adjunct membership on the Board of Directors of the Greater Lawrence Educational Collaborative. But we would actually need to recite this and have this be a part of the minutes of this meeting, and then this particular vote would be appended to the minutes.
Has everyone on the committee read the report and you're supportive of this report?
Word by word, Your Honor.
Excuse me?
Word by word.
I'll read the motion. Motion that the collaborative agreement of the Greater Lawrence Education Collaborative be amended to reflect the Jensen membership status with such amendments reflected in bold in the introductory paragraph, organization, new members, and method of termination provisions of the agreement, and contained in the attached revised provisions. Motion to
approve,
support
Your Honor.
this motion by Ms. Fattacani, seconded by Ms. Martin. Roll call.
Ms. Fattacante?
Yes.
Mr. Leahy?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Caulfield?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
Ms. Doherty?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we adjourn the meeting? Thank you for an excellent meeting. I thought we got a lot accomplished, but I still would like to see these meetings with the parents. And Madam Superintendent, you indicated that in some school districts, they have a half a day, and it enables the parents to come in. I think that's, believe me, that's the way to go. So, nothing else to discuss. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Fattacani, second by Mr. Leahy. Thank you.
Okay, 8:45.